Story 1. How transforming my self-concept unlocked effortless manifestations. As you can see, I started using subliminals many years ago and eventually discovered Neville Goddard's teachings about a year ago. I had an extremely challenging childhood that resulted in a very poor self-concept, which was reflected in everything and everyone around me. I used to think the universe was punishing me, but now I realize it all comes down to our inner world. I started believing in the law of assumption when I noticed that most of my seemingly impossible desires came true at different points in my life. For instance, I manifested moving to my dream state. My mom suddenly stopped being violent and abusive in just one day. My parents moved into a house I had wanted, and I went from being bullied for being ugly to being admired. At the time, I wasn't aware of the law, but I now know I had unconsciously manifested these things. Unfortunately, I had also manifested many negative circumstances, such as fake friends who put me down or partners who cheated on me. Over time, I realized the law was real because all my assumptions, positive or negative, came to fruition in one way or another. Neville Goddard's teachings are pretty straightforward. Assume you have it. However, it was hard for me to solidify my manifestations because of my constant self-doubt and self-deprecation. Here were my main manifestations and the limiting beliefs that held me back. Career. I wanted to enter a job field I felt I wasn't capable of succeeding in. Love. I always believed everyone cheats and I wouldn't be chosen. Friendships. I felt like I was a burden to those around me. I would affirm to myself that I had these things, and sometimes the 3D would deliver. But I would end up losing them because of my underlying beliefs. For example, I was able to manifest people who started great relationships with me, but after 1 or 2 months they would tell me they weren't ready for a relationship or that a third party was involved. Back then, I still believed in fate, so I let them go. Similarly, I would make it to the final round of job interviews where interviewers seemed to really like me only to be ghosted or rejected at the last minute. In December, I manifested a really fun group of friends and was so excited to be part of something. But it turned out they were toxic and they eventually cut me off for reasons out of my control. When I got ghosted for the 4th time with another, "I'm not ready for something serious," I realized I was doing something wrong. My manifestations seemed to hit a standstill. The 3D wasn't giving me romance, friendships, or job offers, and I felt stuck. I decided to dive deeper into techniques and affirmations. That's when I discovered a few TikTok videos about manifestation that explained self-concept and its role in getting what we want. While I believed I could manifest what I wanted by persisting with affirmations, I realized I was constantly fighting against my own limiting beliefs about not being worthy. Concept is simple. People reflect how you see yourself, so why not see yourself as the person you wish to be? However, this was a significant challenge for me, as someone who had been told I wasn't enough for most of my life. Living in the end felt incredibly hard because I didn't have much experience with commitment, praise, or love. While affirmations and scripting helped to some extent, I couldn't fully believe I was worthy of the things I wanted. Deep down, I still carried self-hatred from my past. That's when I decided to date myself for 30 days and see what would happen. Keep in mind, techniques don't manifest things. Your state does, but this approach worked for me. I began acting as though I were the perfect lover, living in the end as the person I wanted to be, and treating myself as if I were in a relationship with myself. It might sound strange, but think about it. We often chase and sacrifice so much for others we love. How often do we do that for ourselves? I met my own love language needs, quality time and words of affirmation by taking myself on dates and writing love letters to myself. When money was tight, I would make a cup of tea at home and imagine I was at a fancy cafe. I wrote letters from the perspective of someone deeply in love with me. When negative thoughts arose, I'd counter them by thinking, "Why would I say that? My partner wouldn't like it." Over time, I got to know myself better. I discovered my likes, desires, values, and more. After 30 days, I truly fell in love with myself. I became unstoppable in my confidence because I recognized my value. I let go of trying to manifest specific people or external love because I had found it within myself. It was the most freeing and fulfilling feeling. When I stopped believing I was only valuable with friends, love, or a job, I prioritized myself and shed my lifelong limiting beliefs. I also redefined detachment. For me, it meant being so fulfilled within myself that I no longer cared about external validation. And that's when results started pouring in. The fourth specific person came back and started calling me every weekend. We developed a deep emotional connection, but I chose not to pursue a relationship because I no longer wanted one. Old friends who had ignored me suddenly reached out, showing love and telling me I was the best friend they'd ever had. Even distant acquaintances came forward with similar sentiments. I manifested multiple job offers after 8 months of rejections. While they weren't exactly what I wanted, they were steps in the right direction. One funny example: I imagined working as an engineer at a big tech company, and I received an offer as an assistant to an engineer at that very company. While I'm still working on bigger manifestations like breaking into tech and moving out, I know these things will come with ease now. Self-love is truly transformative. I recommend everyone try it for themselves. Thanks for reading.
Story 2. Transform my life in just 4 to 5 days with self-concept work. If you've read the books Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant or Mirror Work by Louise Hay, you're probably familiar with the advice to repeat the affirmation, I love myself, in front of a mirror, looping it in your head like it's the only thought that matters. Let me tell you, it works. Even if you don't initially believe the affirmation, do it anyway. It's far more effective than focusing affirmations on someone else, like a specific person. Why? Because everyone is you pushed out. Background: a few months ago, I went through a breakup and decided to deal with it in a healthy way. I couldn't afford to take the unhealthy route because I lived with my parents and too many other people. I'd wake up at odd hours for devoted journaling and crying sessions. During this time, I discovered Neville Goddard's teachings, which led me to the concept of self-love. In 2 months, I saw huge progress. My SP told me he thought about getting back together. But I got overly attached to this idea, dropped my mental dieting, and focused entirely on my SP. This brought all my insecurities flooding back. Naturally, when I asked him, when will we be back together, he said he didn't think it was a good idea. The second heartbreak, I was devastated. The feelings of rejection and anxiety consumed me, and it felt like I was reliving the breakup all over again. Begging your SP or clinging to them is never the answer. It only brings back those same feelings of inadequacy. Be gentle with yourself, even if it feels impossible. Unfortunately, I wasn't gentle with myself this time. I started hating myself and suppressing my emotions as I was overwhelmed by law school and didn't have the energy to process everything. I jumped into a mental diet solely focused on affirmations for my SP, completely ignoring myself. I thought I could fix things by manifesting love from someone else, assuming I'd deal with self-love later. This was a huge mistake. The breakdown: after 21 days of SP-focused affirmations, I felt calm but empty. I added Dylan James self-concept tapes, hoping they'd help. While the affirmations were good, the tapes gave me nightmares when playing as I slept. One morning, I woke up from a nightmare feeling completely disoriented. I was experiencing depersonalization derealization. This condition felt like being trapped in a dream, leaving me anxious and detached. This experience pushed me into therapy and later psychiatry. My obsession with this condition forced me to abandon my SP-focused affirmations altogether. Ironically, my manifestation worked. My SP admitted they loved me, but didn't want to get back together. Why? Because I still hated myself. The turning point: choosing self-love at rock bottom. I finally focused on myself. It wasn't easy, but I committed to self-love out of necessity. A friend saw my SP on a dating app, which pushed me into grief. My parents noticed my distress, my worst nightmare. After confronting my SP and going no contact, I returned to mirror work and reread Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Fueled by anger and heartbreak, I channeled my emotions into self-love. I repeated I love myself throughout the day, even as I fell asleep. I let all my feelings, good or bad, pass through me without judgment. Journaling helped me release emotions, and over a few days, I transformed completely. My journey of transformation: day 1. I was consumed by guilt and regret, but pushed through. Repeating I love myself felt tough, but I trusted the promise that life would love me back if I loved myself. Writing down intrusive thoughts helped me process them and I began forgiving myself for past mistakes. Miracle. The guilt and regret left me. My mind reframed my past actions with compassion. It's okay. I didn't know better then, but now I do. Day 2. Resentment towards my SP surfaced, but I wrote an unsent letter to process my anger. By the end of the day, I felt lighter and continued affirming self-love. Day 3. Grief overwhelmed me. I debated whether to manifest my SP or prioritize myself. Ultimately, I chose self-love. The urgency to bring my SP back dissolved, replaced by a bold decision to love myself first. Manifestation. My dad praised me for growing into a confident and compassionate person, admitting he'd been too harsh in the past. Day 4. I processed grief by journaling about lost memories and unfulfilled plans with my SP. Through tears, I released the pain, energy returned to my body, and obsessive thoughts about my SP vanished. Positive thoughts about my future emerged naturally, fueled by my growing self-worth. Manifestation. My SP apologized for ignoring my pain and expressed a desire to reconcile. My reply? That's sweet, but I want to work on myself. Key takeaways: self-love transforms everything. Loving yourself allows you to forgive the past, imagine a brighter future, and experience life's miracles. Focus on self-concept first. Manifestations flow naturally when your foundation is strong. Books to start with: Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. Mirror Work by Louise Hay. I've only reached day 5 of mirror work, but my life has already shifted in profound ways. Trust the process. Love yourself, and life will love you back.
Story 3. It finally clicked. Focus on your self-concept. This is going to be a long post, but I came here to share that self-concept is the single most important thing you can work on for yourself. I started my manifestation journey the same way many of you probably did, to manifest my SP back. I learned about manifestation during the summer, but I never truly applied it consciously, and it never really clicked for me until about a month ago. At its core, self-concept is about rewiring your brain. I know we're all prone to doubts, but doubts only have power when you give them power. After applying the law consistently for about a month, I can now say that I've fallen in love with myself for the first time in my life. When I first consciously started practicing the law a month ago, I often felt anxious for no apparent reason. Every time I thought about manifesting, my anxiety would spike, and I'd start doubting myself, my SP, and everything else, despite having no real reason to feel that way. Then, I came across something on this subreddit that resonated with me. Someone had explained how anxiety and excitement are biologically similar. They exist on the same spectrum. So, I reframed my anxiety as excitement, telling myself that I was excited because my desires were already mine. I also started imagining how I'd feel if all my desires had already manifested, a mix of anxiety, excitement, and a bit of being overwhelmed. I interpreted these emotions as confirmation that what I was doing was working. This reframing worked temporarily, and I kept building myself up from there. I worked diligently on self-concept affirmations while also incorporating SP affirmations on the side. I curated a playlist that boosted my confidence and walked around knowing I was the creator of my reality. Whenever negative thoughts surfaced, I dealt with them by either laughing them off, flipping them into positive thoughts, or simply ignoring them and redirecting my focus to something else. I told myself that whatever the 3D world was showing me, I didn't care. It wasn't my truth. I knew myself, my journey, and my capabilities. Over time, I stopped feeling anxious or excited about my desires and refused to give weight to any doubts. Initially, I worried I was doing it wrong because I wasn't obsessing over my desires 24/7. As a deeply sensitive person, I assumed I needed to feel an intense longing for my manifestations. But I realized that's not true at all. Manifestation is easy. You are the operant power of your reality. The more I detached from the outcomes, whether it was about my SP or how people perceived me, the happier I became. Interestingly, my manifestations began to show up faster. I'm also someone who tends to overthink, so I decided to use that to my advantage. Reflecting on how far I'd come in life was a game changer for my self-concept. I didn't grow up in the best environment and was prone to negative self-talk, but I started practicing gratitude. I listed everything I was grateful for, and it worked wonders. I realized I was attending one of the top colleges for my major, was talented in my field, and had an amazing circle of friends who would drop everything to support me. Gratitude helped me recognize how much good I had already manifested, which made me feel more loved and capable. As I entered this state of detachment, my thoughts began manifesting within hours. Free food, random desires, texts from multiple SPs, job opportunities, and concert tickets. Everything flowed effortlessly. For example, I'd be on a date with someone new, think, wow, they really like me, and they'd reflect that exact thought back to me. My advice? Create affirmations that are unique to you. How do you want to view yourself? What traits does the best version of you embody? Express gratitude daily for the people and things in your life. It puts you in a state of love and abundance. I've now reached a point where I don't do affirmations as often because I'm already living as the version of myself I used to affirm. However, I always take time to express gratitude because it keeps me grounded in love and abundance. Reflect on what you currently love about your life and why. Don't view the world from a place of lack. Focus on what you already have and the endless possibilities ahead. We often obsess over what we don't have, but what if we start appreciating what we already do? Lastly, I've never practiced SATs because I struggle with focus, and that technique doesn't work for me. Find what resonates with you and trust the process.
Story 4. How I successfully changed my self-concept using the Lullaby method. Have you ever had that aha moment where everything just clicks? That's exactly what happened to me during my manifestation journey. The most fascinating part of it all is that I didn't fully understand how manifestation works until I looked back, connecting the dots after my desires had already shown up in my life. If there's one thing I can tell you from personal experience, it's this. Self-concept is the key to everything. Manifestation isn't just about wishful thinking or repeating affirmations like a mantra. It's about embodying the version of yourself who already has what you desire. And that starts with how you view yourself, your life, and the world around you. I'm going to walk you through a step-by-step process that changed my life, specifically using the Lullaby method. It's simple, actionable, and most importantly, it works. If you stick with it, I promise you'll begin to see the shifts in your life, and everything will start falling into place naturally. Step 1. Pick an affirmation. The first step is choosing an affirmation that resonates with you on a deep level, something that feels true or comforting. It should be a phrase that lights you up, inspires you, or gives you a sense of peace. Let me share mine. My world takes care of me. I chose this affirmation because I genuinely enjoy the feeling of being cared for. It reminds me of moments in my life when my friends, family, or even past relationships supported me in ways that made me feel safe and loved. For example, when I was sick and a friend brought me dinner and medicine. When my mom cooked meals for me every day while I was quarantining with COVID. When an ex looked after me after a rough night out. Each time I repeated the phrase, "My world takes care of me," I tapped into those comforting feelings. It made me feel peaceful, like I could surrender my worries and trust that everything would work out. That's what you want from your affirmation, something that evokes calm, trust, or joy. Step 2. The Lullaby method. Here's where the magic begins. The Lullaby method. Every night before going to bed, repeat your affirmations softly to yourself. Let it become the last thing you hear and feel before you drift off to sleep. When I started, I wasn't even trying to make it a habit. One night, I simply said, "My world takes care of me," before falling asleep because it made me feel calm. The next night, I found myself repeating it again naturally. After a few nights, I decided to make it a consistent practice, saying the affirmation a few times every night before bed. The key here is consistency. Do this for at least a month. Nighttime is such a powerful time for reprogramming your mind because your subconscious is most receptive as you drift off to sleep. Step 3. Find evidence to support your affirmation Once you've picked your affirmation and started practicing the lullaby method, the next step is to look for evidence in your life that supports your affirmation. Why is this important? Because your mind craves proof. The more evidence you find, the more your affirmation will feel true to you, and the more deeply it will embed into your self-concept. For me, supporting evidence came from moments when I felt cared for, like my friend showing up with medicine when I wasn't feeling well, my mom going out of her way to make me comfortable during tough times, small acts of kindness from strangers, like someone holding the door open for me or offering help when I least expected it. If you're manifesting wealth, your evidence might be something like treating yourself to a nice dinner after a paycheck, remembering a time when money came to you unexpectedly, feeling abundant when you buy yourself something you truly love. These moments, no matter how small, reinforce the truth of your affirmation. They take it from just words to something you deeply believe in. Step 4. Reinforcement. This is where the magic becomes part of your reality. Repeat steps 1, 3 consistently for several months, and you'll begin to notice subtle changes in your life. The beauty of manifestation is that it doesn't always arrive with a bang. Instead, it sneaks in so naturally that you might not even realize your desires have shown up until you pause to reflect. Here's how my world takes care of me manifested for me. Work-life balance improved. I got the projects I wanted, partnered with amazing colleagues, and even when mistakes happened, my boss was conveniently away. Random luck became the norm. Buses waited for me. People made exceptions for me in business. I frequently received unexpected gifts, and compliments became a regular occurrence. Now, don't get me wrong, my life isn't perfect. Challenges still arise. But what's different is that every time something bad happens, something good follows to balance it out. Whenever this happens, I affirm, my world takes care of me, which reinforces my belief even further. This cycle of belief, evidence, and reinforcement is how self-concept becomes the foundation of your reality. The reason this method is so powerful is that it reprograms your subconscious mind, which is the driving force behind manifestation. By focusing on self-concept, you're essentially telling your mind, this is who I am, and this is how my life works. Your subconscious then aligns with that belief, and your external reality begins to reflect it. The lullaby method may sound simple, but its power lies in consistency and belief. By picking an affirmation, practicing it nightly, finding evidence to support it, and reinforcing it with gratitude, you'll watch your self-concept and your life transform in ways you never imagined. So, take that first step. Pick your affirmation, commit to the process, and trust that everything is aligning for you. Try it out and let me know how it works for you. Wishing you the best of luck on your journey.
Story 5. How I overcame depression, anxiety, and transformed my self-concept. For as long as I can remember, I struggled with depression and anxiety. Even during my early years, I felt like I didn't belong. At 20 now, I can look back and see how those feelings of being the black sheep shaped my life. I always felt out of place, like I was fundamentally different from others in my social groups or schools. These feelings were isolating and relentless. I hated myself to the extent that I truly didn't care whether I woke up the next day. 2018 was a turning point, but not in a good way. It was the worst year of my life. I was 18 then, struggling to find a sense of stability. I had a job, but it became unbearable due to the toxic environment. The way my workplace treated me broke me, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I decided to quit, hoping to find peace, but instead, I ended up jobless for an entire year. During that time, I felt like I was sinking deeper into an abyss. My life revolved around visits to the UK job center, but even that felt like a hollow exercise. I hated my life, my appearance, and the way I spoke to myself. I became my own worst enemy, constantly comparing myself to others and tearing myself down. I lost interest in the simplest things, even basic hygiene. I went weeks without showering, My room was so cluttered it was almost uninhabitable, and I spent hours playing on my PS4 to escape reality. Social interaction became impossible. I couldn't even order food over the counter or talk on the phone. My anxiety paralyzed me. I lost all my friends, grew irritable, and lashed out at those around me. At my lowest, I felt there was no point in living. In 2019, I found a retail job. It felt like a lifeline. Though I was anxious about starting work after my last bad experience, desperation pushed me forward. The store was new, and I found joy in helping set it up for opening. During those weeks, I made friends and experienced a sense of purpose for the first time in years. For a while, I forgot about the darkness that had consumed me. But it didn't last. A few months into the job, I began to feel depressed again. This time, I noticed how my emotions seemed to ripple out and affect those around me. When I felt low, people treated me differently, as if mirroring the way I was showing up. My hours were cut back to 4-hour shifts, and I was barely earning enough to get by. I fell back into old habits, spending endless hours gaming, neglecting my health, and gaining weight. Fast forward to February this year, and my life took a devastating turn. My nan, pap, and cousin were killed in a fatal car accident. They died on impact, and I was shattered. Grief consumed me, pulling me back into the dark place I thought I'd left behind. I stopped going to work and spent weeks grieving their loss. By March, the funeral came around. It was one of the hardest days of my life. Raised as an atheist, I've never believed in heaven, but I clung to the idea that death might bring transformation. However, March didn't just bring grief, it also brought heartbreak. My girlfriend of 7 years left me. She was my world, my universe, and I loved her more than I loved myself. Losing her felt like losing a part of my soul. Looking back now, I can see how my struggles in 2018 affected our relationship and pushed her away. At the time, though, I blamed myself entirely and spiraled further into despair. In April, I stumbled across the law of attraction while searching for ways to win my ex back. I watched videos promising to help me get her back within a month of no contact. Initially, the idea that the universe could control my life captivated me. I wanted answers, someone or something to explain why my life was the way it was. I started meditating to calm my anxiety and regain focus. But the heartbreak didn't let up. I lost over 2 stone that month from barely eating or sleeping. My physical health was deteriorating as quickly as my mental health. Late April was when everything began to shift. While scrolling through YouTube, I found Neville Goddard's teachings, and my perspective began to change. I dove deep into his work, trying techniques like SATs, affirmations, and isn't it wonderful? At first, it felt overwhelming, but I was determined to make it work. One day, I realized I needed to stop chasing external solutions and look inward. I began a mental diet, replacing the constant stream of negative thoughts with affirmations like, I am loved, I am worthy, and I am confident in my own skin. It wasn't easy. I didn't notice immediate changes, but I persisted. 2 months later, I woke up and realized the heartbreak was gone. I didn't feel the desperate need for my ex anymore. What I had truly craved all along was my own love. For the first time in my life, I started falling in love with myself. I began working out, taking care of my appearance, and speaking to myself with kindness and respect. My confidence skyrocketed. The person I was 2 months ago felt like a distant memory. I no longer wanted my ex back because I realized I deserved better. Today, I'm a different person. I've reconnected with friends, attracted new opportunities, and started enjoying life in ways I never did before. My self-concept has transformed, and I've embraced the belief that I am worthy of love, success, and happiness. If you're struggling, here's my advice. Read Neville Goddard's books. They are life-changing treasures. Stay off social media and focus on your inner world. Be kind to yourself. You are doing better than you think, and your journey is unfolding perfectly. Thank you for reading my story. I hope it inspires someone to begin their journey of self-discovery and transformation.
Story 6. Daring to Assume. My journey to a new self-concept. I initially planned to write a detailed post outlining every single technique I've used on my journey, But I quickly realized that this approach would be tedious, not only for me to write, but also for you to read. Over the years, I've explored a wide variety of methods, from visualization and pre-sleep visualizations to affirmations, scripting, prayer, subliminal audios, the gateway tapes, and revision. Each technique has its own unique value, and what I've discovered is that belief is the key to their effectiveness. If you truly believe a technique will work, it does. This has been a consistent and undeniable truth in my experience, and I find it fascinating how much power lies in something as simple as belief. Reflecting on these techniques has given me a deep appreciation for how flexible and creative we can be in our approach to personal growth. While I've benefited from many of these methods, my journey has also shown me that techniques are only a tool. They are not the core driver of change. Today, I want to share something even more profound, something that goes beyond techniques. What I'm about to share is a real turning point in my journey, the moment when everything began to shift for me. This moment ties closely to Neville Goddard's teachings, particularly his idea of daring to assume. For those unfamiliar with this concept, it isn't about practicing a specific technique or following a step-by-step process. Instead, it's about making a decision in the moment, a leap of faith, where you assume a new truth about yourself. This shift is instantaneous and incredibly powerful because it comes from a place of conviction. I remember the day it happened as if it were yesterday. I had been on this journey for about 2 years at that point. I'd seen manifestations occur, and I had developed a certain level of faith in the principles of the law. But despite my progress, I felt there was still so much untapped potential. I knew I hadn't yet reached the level of success I aspired to. There was a sense of incompleteness, as though I was standing on the edge of something transformative, but hadn't yet taken the step forward. In a moment of clarity and courage, I decided to focus on improving my self-concept, something Neville often emphasized in his teachings. I didn't overcomplicate it. I kept it simple. I thought about what I wanted most, to feel respected and valued everywhere I went. I decided to assume that I was already a high-value person and that everyone I encountered recognized and respected me as such. It wasn't a long, drawn-out process, just a single, decisive moment where I made that assumption. Afterward, I didn't think about it too much. I simply let it be. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Almost immediately, I began to notice changes in how people interacted with me. It was as if the world had rearranged itself to reflect my new assumption. People started treating me differently, better in fact, with more respect and admiration. This wasn't just about how others treated me, though. It also changed how I saw myself. The more I noticed these shifts, the more I began to believe in my new identity. And as I believed, the transformation deepened. This realization was a pivotal moment for me. It showed me that our dominant assumptions about ourselves are incredibly powerful. They act as a foundation, influencing every other belief and assumption we hold. By changing my dominant assumption to one where I was seen as high value, I set off a chain reaction. Everything in my life started to align with this new belief. This shift didn't come without its challenges, though. As I began to see myself as a high-value person, I also realized that I needed to live up to this new identity. It wasn't just about how others saw me. It was about how I carried myself in every aspect of my life. My health, finances, relationships, and career all began to shift to reflect this new concept of self. It was as if the entire structure of my life started rearranging itself to match my new belief. Looking back, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to reflect on this journey and share it with others. It's given me a deeper understanding of what truly drives transformation. What surprised me most was how much power was packed into a single decision. That moment of daring to assume a new truth about myself set everything else into motion. The ripple effects of this decision have been profound. By daring to assume that I was already a high-value person, I created a reality where this belief was consistently reaffirmed. Others began to treat me as high value, which reinforced my own belief, creating a positive feedback loop. This loop became the foundation for even greater changes. As I began to embody this new identity, every area of my life began to transform. My health improved because I started valuing myself enough to take better care of my body. My financial situation shifted as I began to see myself as deserving of abundance. My relationships deepened and improved as I carried myself with confidence and self-respect. Even my career took on new dimensions as I attracted opportunities that aligned with this new self-concept. Reflecting on all of this brings me to an important question. What is your dominant assumption about yourself? If you dig deep enough, you'll find that there's one core belief driving all the others. This dominant assumption shapes your experiences, relationships, and opportunities. It's the lens through which you view yourself and the world around you. In conclusion, I want to leave you with a simple but powerful reminder. Changing your dominant assumption can change everything. When you shift how you see yourself, the world around you begins to shift in response. My journey is living proof of this. By daring to assume that I was high value, I set in motion a series of changes that transform every aspect of my life. This is the essence of Neville Goddard's teachings. Change your concept of self, and your world will follow. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this. The power to transform your life lies in a single moment of decision. Daring to assume a new truth about yourself can open the door to possibilities you never imagined. So, what assumption will you dare to make today?
Story 7. Dramatic changes through new self-concept. Hey, I've been a lurker here for a while, but I recently created an account because I felt deeply inspired to share my story. This experience has been life-changing for me, and I finally gathered the courage to write it all down. There is no reality in the world other than your consciousness. Although you may now seem to be what you do not want to be, all you need to do to change it, and to prove the change by circumstances in your world, is to quietly assume that you are that which you now want to be. In a way you do not know, you will become it. Since I was a child, I struggled with very low self-esteem, particularly regarding my physical appearance. From a young age, I was constantly subjected to comments, jokes, and criticisms about how I looked. People made remarks about my ugliness, and over time, those words became deeply embedded in my self-perception. I began to see myself as they did, unworthy, unattractive, and unlovable. This negative self-image followed me throughout my formative years. In middle school and high school, I endured teasing and ridicule that seemed relentless. Even outside of school, I wasn't safe from judgment. Strangers on the street, on buses, or in public places made comments that chipped away at my confidence. On more than one occasion, I felt embarrassed for my friends, who had to witness this cruelty firsthand. It made me feel like a burden, someone they might not want to be associated with. Unsurprisingly, I had no experience in the realm of dating or relationships. While others my age were exploring crushes, first loves, and moments of intimacy, I stayed on the sidelines. I had plenty of platonic crushes, but I never dared to believe that anyone could like me back. My attempts to change my appearance through makeup, exercise, new clothes, and hairstyles felt futile. No matter what I did, I remained the same, trapped in a cycle of self-loathing. The weight of it all became unbearable. I began to feel that I wasn't fully living, that I couldn't truly enjoy life while being consumed by these insecurities. For a while, I tried to accept myself as I was. I told myself this was just my reality, but deep down, I knew I didn't want to live the rest of my life this way. I began searching for solutions, exploring ideas about positivity and changing beliefs. I spent hours online reading about self-help techniques, but I was skeptical. Could changing my mindset really make a difference? Was it possible for me, someone so entrenched in negativity, to transform? At the same time, a close friend of mine who had started exploring similar topics began encouraging me to think differently. She shared little insights and pushed me to consider new perspectives. One day I decided to try affirmations. I wrote down pages of positive statements about myself and repeated them daily. Yet nothing changed. I didn't feel any different, and my external reality remained the same. It was frustrating, and I felt like giving up. Eventually, I realized I had nothing to lose by committing to the process fully at least once. I didn't tell anyone about my decision. I wanted this journey to be my own, free from judgment or external expectations. I set a goal for myself. 100 days of acting as if I were confident and beautiful. At the time, I hadn't heard of Neville Goddard, but what I did was essentially the essence of his teachings, changing my habitual state of mind through a mental diet. I began by writing a simple affirmation on a small card. I am beautiful and attractive. Every day I focused on living in this new state. I carried the affirmation with me, reading it whenever I needed a reminder. I started to act as though I already was the person I wanted to be. Wherever I went, I made a conscious effort to look at people confidently, imagining I was a beautiful and self-assured woman. If someone glanced my way, I immediately told myself it was because they admired me or found me attractive. I played upbeat music to boost my mood and imagined myself walking down the street, radiating confidence and receiving positive attention. Mornings became a ritual. As I got ready for the day, I visualized myself as the person I aspired to be. I imagined what it would feel like to be admired, loved, and desired. When I saw attractive women, instead of feeling envious, I imagined being them. I visualized how I would feel if I were just as beautiful, picturing myself in various scenarios, alone in my room, out with friends, or meeting new people. The first week of this challenge was incredibly difficult. It felt unnatural, like I was lying to myself. I worried that everyone around me could see through the act. But by the second week, I decided to approach it with a sense of playfulness. I treated it like a game, immersing myself in the feelings of confidence and beauty. Slowly it began to feel less forced. By the third week, something shifted within me. This new way of thinking started to feel normal, like second nature. Although I didn't complete the full 100 days consciously, I didn't need to. The change had already taken root. My old mindset was gone, replaced by a new, empowering belief system. At first, the changes in my external reality were subtle. But over time they became undeniable. The disrespectful comments that had haunted me for years disappeared entirely. Instead, I started receiving compliments from both men and women. People treated me with a level of kindness and admiration I had never experienced before. It was shocking at first, but it also felt natural, as though the world had finally caught up with my new self-perception. What surprised me most was that none of these changes stemmed from altering my physical appearance. My weight, style, and features remained the same. The transformation was entirely internal. As time went on, my external reality continued to evolve. I began receiving regular attention, compliments, and even dates, things I once believed were impossible for me. When I ran into old classmates, they were astonished by how beautiful I looked. My friends and family noticed the change too, often asking what I had done to achieve it. Today I feel like a completely different person. I'm still an ordinary girl, but I carry myself with a confidence that makes me feel extraordinary. Meeting new people and forming connections now feels natural. I no longer doubt whether someone could like me. Instead, I expect it, and that's exactly what happens. When I say I was changed, it means that having assumed I am what the moment denied, I remained in that state long enough to make it stable. All my energy flowed from that state. I no longer thought of that state, I thought from it. When a state becomes stable, it compels a change in behavior relative to the world. People are drawn into your life, playing their parts as though they initiated the events themselves. They must act differently toward you because your relationship to the world has changed. Almost 4 years later, my physical appearance has changed for the better, but the real transformation began in my imagination. This experience taught me a powerful lesson. Don't let others' opinions define you or limit your potential. You have the power to become whoever you want to be. Don't wait for others to give you what you need. Give it to yourself first and watch your world transform in ways you never thought possible.